Between Heaven and Hell, Peter Kreeft, a dialogue somewhere beyond death with John F. Kennedy, C.S. Lewis, and Aldous Huxley. Prologue. On November 22, 1963, three great men died within a few hours of each other: C.S. Lewis, John F. Kennedy, and Aldous Huxley. All three believed, in different ways, that death was not the end of human life. Suppose they were right, and suppose they met after death. How might the conversation go? It will be part of the great conversation that has been going on for millennia. For these three men represent the most influential philosophies of life in human history: ancient Western theism, Lewis; modern Western humanism, or Catholic, Kennedy; and ancient Eastern pantheism, Huxley. These three men also represent the three most influential versions of Christianity in our present culture: traditional mainline of Orthodoxy Christianity, what Lewis called mere Christianity; modernism or humanistic Christianity, Kennedy being Catholic; and Orientalized or mystical Christianity, Huxley. Lewis took his Christianity straight, or mere, instead of reinterpreting Christianity in the light of any other religion, ancient or modern, Eastern or Western. He interpreted those traditions in the light of Christianity. Following the lead of the medieval Christian philosophers in his way, he used much of ancient Western culture, especially Plato and Aristotle, as an aid for his Christian apologetics. Kennedy, though not a philosopher or theologian, was probably, in a vague and general way, a humanistic Christian in the sense definitive above, although he did not give public expression to his personal religious belief, which is itself a humanistic rather than traditional attitude, relegating religion to private life. There is good evidence for his classification of Kennedy. Much of it is present in Gary Will's Bear Rune Schwartz. In any case, I take the literary liberty of supposing Kennedy to have been a typical modernist Christian in order to set up this complete and typical threesome. The purpose of the dialogue is not historical accuracy. The argument is all, as it is with Plato's Socrates. The fact that Lewis was a Protestant and Anglican and Kennedy a Roman Catholic is irrelevant here. Traditionalists and modernist Christians exist in both churches, and the difference between them is far more important than the difference between Protestantism and Catholicism. Whether the Pope speaks infallibly ex cathedra, and whether there are seven sacraments or two, are far less important than whether Jesus is literally divine and literally rose from the dead. Or third man, Aldous Huxley, expressed his deepest religious belief in an ontology of mystical wisdom, the perennial philosophy. Though he is better known for his novel, like Kennedy, he sometimes used Christian categories to hold a different substance rather than, like Lewis, using Greek or modern categories to hold Christian substance. In Huxley's case, the substance was pantheism, and he reinterpreted Christianity as a form of the universal perennial philosophy of pantheism. In historical fact, Huxley's Gnosticism was closer to the heart of this religion that is pantheism. But once again, I take literary liberties of emphasis for the sake of the argument in the dialogue. The events of November 22, 1963 almost seems to have been providentially rigged to set up the situation I have imagined in this dialogue, a microcosm of humanity's tripartite intellectual history as well as of the current tripartite debate among Christian theologians. The trialogue centers on the center, the hinge of our history. Its main question is the identity of Jesus. So, starting with Kennedy. Where the hell are we? Lewis, you must be a Catholic. Kennedy, you could tell by the accent, hey? Lewis, yes, I say. Aren't you President Kennedy? How did you get there, here, wherever here is? Kennedy, ex-president, I think. I seem to have been assassinated. Who are you? And to return to my first question, where the hell are we? Lewis, I'm C.S. Lewis. I just died too, and I'm pretty sure you're wrong about the location. This place just feels too good to be hell. On the other hand, I didn't see any God. Did you? Kennedy? No. Lewis, then it can be even either. I wonder whether we're stuck in limbo. Kennedy, do you really think so? Lewis, actually, I think it more likely that it's purgatory, especially if we end up getting out of it and into heaven. I did a bit of speculating about such places as a writer, especially in The Great Divorce. I don't suppose you've read it. No, well, but surely you should be familiar with such concepts if you were a Roman Catholic. Kennedy, well, I was more of a modern Catholic. I never bothered about transcendental mysteries of or mythology. I was too busy trying to take care of the world I live in for escapist thinking. One world at a time, as Toro put it. Lewis, you can see now that you were wrong, can you? Kennedy, what do you mean? Lewis, why? First, that it isn't mythology, it's real. Wherever we are, here we are, large as life. And second, that's the rule, isn't it? One world at a time. Here we are in another world talking about our past life on Earth. That's two worlds at a time by my count. And while we are on Earth, we could think about this world too. That's also two words at the time, isn't it? Finally, it's no escapism. In fact, not to have prepared for this journey while we were living on Earth would have been escapism. Don't you agree? Kennedy, I suppose you're right, but look, someone else is coming. Can you make out who it is? Lewis, why, it's Huxley. Aldous Huxley. Aldous, welcome. How did you get here? Huxley, same way you did, I'm sure. I just died. Oh, I say, Kennedy and Lewis. What good company to die in or live in. Whatever you were doing, where is this place anyway? Kennedy, that's what we're trying to figure out. Lewis thinks it might be some sort of limbo or purgatory. I'm just hoping it's not hell. Huxley, well, you're both wrong. It's heaven. It must be heaven. Kennedy, why? Huxley, because everywhere is heaven. If only you have enlightened eyes. Lewis, even hell? Huxley, On this going to be fun. Lewis, you've lost none of your cantankerous penchant for Socratic questioning, have you? I remember you made Oxford a regular hornet's nest when you debated back on Earth, and now you've shipped your hornets to heaven. This is a nice challenge. Lewis then replied to it. If everywhere is heaven, then either hell does not exist, or hell is part of heaven. Which way will you have it, Aldous? Kennedy, wait, please. Before you two take off, could you give me some assurances about this sort of debate? I was a debater too, but we politicians confine ourselves to the concrete and tangible. I'm not at all convinced you can do anything more than talk through your hat about things you've never seen. Lewis, so you want an assurance that there is some method of really finding the truth about things we can't see? Kennedy, yes, before you take off, be sure you have a plane that can fly and can get back to Earth and land. Lewis, you said you wrote a book about heaven and hell. How the hell, how in heaven's name, how on earth? Do you know anything about the heaven and hell? Have you ever been there? Lewis, yes, indeed. I've been in and out of the back doors of both many times. Huxley, you, Mr. President. Kennedy, please call Jack. Lewis, that will be rather confusing, my friends. Call me Jack. Huxley, suppose we let rank have first choice. Would you mind if we call you Lewis? Lewis, if you please, clarity seems to be the thing here, not titles. Huxley, fine. Now, Jack Lewis mean that remark about heaven and hell spirituality, not literary. Kennedy, oh, well, if that's all you mean. Lewis, no, wait. Let's not get bogged down in the swamps of spiritual senses. Let's use words as literally as we can. I have not been in either heaven or hell literally. Kennedy, fine. Then how can you possibly know anything about them? Lewis, I've been told. Kennedy, what? What do you mean? Lewis, do you know anything at all about Tibet? Kennedy, of course. Lewis, have you ever been there? Kennedy, no. Lewis, then how do you know anything about it? Kennedy, oh, I see, I've been told, but that's knowing only if you believe what you've been told. Lewis, exactly, it's called faith. Kennedy, you just passively, uncritically believe. Lewis, no, I believe for good reason. And then I explore my belief with good reason. Kennedy, I certainly don't want to impugn your faith, but I think my faith is quite different from yours. Lewis, how? Kennedy, you're one of those theological conservatives, aren't you? Lewis, that depends on what you mean by the label. I've always thought liberal and conservative were terms used not to think but to avoid thinking. You can classify anything as liberal or conservative, then simply declare yourself one or the other, and all your thought for the rest of your life can be a knee jerk. Kennedy, well, fundamentalist then. Lewis, what does that mean? Many people associate it with no drinking, no smoking, or no swearing. But that's tender. I was not a fundamentalist. Kennedy, I guess, I mean, do you take everything in the Bible literally? Lewis, of course not. When Jesus says, I'm the door, I don't look for a knob on him. Kennedy, and when he talks about heaven and hell, Do you look for real angels and demons? Lewis, yes. Kennedy, why? Why not interpret that poetically? Lewis, because the speaker didn't mean it poetically. Kennedy, how do you know that? Lewis, it's just simple common sense. Look here. Do you think anybody, either Jesus or any of his errors, reached for a literal knob when he said, I'm the door? Kennedy, no. Lewis, and when he talked about heaven and hell, do you think his errors interpreted it poetically? Kennedy, no. They probably weren't sophisticated enough. Lewis, was Jesus a good teacher? Kennedy, of course. Lewis, does a good teacher take into account his audience and how they are likely to interpret his words? Kennedy, of course. Lewis, and does a good teacher deliberately use poetic language when he knows his audience will misinterpret it and take it literally? Kennedy, no. Lewis, you see that follows then. Well, you see what follows then. He meant to be taken literally when he talk about the existence of heaven and hell. They're real places. We will certainly go to one of them forever. It matters infinitely which. Sorry, that is certainly what he meant. Everyone to get out of his teaching about heaven and hell. Kennedy, so you really believe in a place with devils, with horn and hoofs, and all? You a 20th century man? Lewis, as I wrote one of my books, I'm not sure what the time has to do with it. Um, and I'm not particular about the horns and the hoofs. Kennedy, but otherwise, yes? Lewis, yes. Kennedy, well, I find it a lot easier to believe in the goodness of a man than in the badness of God. Lewis, the badness of God? Kennedy, yes. Can you imagine a worse God than one who claps human being into hell for all eternity? Lewis, yes, I can imagine a much worse God than that. Kennedy, what God? Lewis, one who will put everyone in hell who didn't deserve it. An unjust God. But the God I believe in is not only above injustice, is also about justice, is pure love. Kennedy, wonderful, then there is no hell. Lewis, that does not follow. Kennedy, why not? How could pure love create hell? Lewis, I don't think God created this hell. I think we do, or perhaps evil spirits do. Kennedy, but God puts you there. Lewis, now again, we put ourselves there by free choice. Kennedy, why would anyone do that? Who would prefer hell to heaven if it was up to our own free choice? Lewis, anyone who found God uncomfortable, unendurable, anyone who could not stand the light, the truth. Kennedy, you mean it's not a matter of good deeds versus bad deeds, a kind of moral bookkeeping? Lewis, no, indeed. Look at the thief on the cross. He made it to paradise, even though his life, red ink, certainly outweighed the black. Kennedy, I never thought of our destiny in any other terms than moral bookkeeping. Lewis, that's why you never believe in hell. Kennedy, perhaps so, but I still don't understand how anyone could prefer hell to heaven. Lewis, what do you think hell is, and what do you think heaven is? Kennedy. As I just told you, I never gave it much thought. I suppose I thought of them in the usual way, as a reward and punishments, pleasure and pains, bliss and misery. Lewis, and you could not understand anyone who will freely prefer misery to bliss? Kennedy, exactly. Lewis, suppose the bliss is not a reward track onto a good life, like a great tack onto a school course, but the good life itself in its consummation. And suppose the punishment is also not external and tack on, but to internal, the consumption of the evil itself. Do you see what follows? Kennedy, I think so. We choose heaven or hell in every choice of good or evil. Lewis, exactly. Kennedy, so that's what you meant by having been in heaven and hell many times. But now you're interpreting the biblical heaven and hell poetically, not literally. Instead of golden streets and fire and brimstone, instead of physical rewards and punishment, your heaven and hell are spiritual states. I thought you insisted on interpreting heaven and hell literally. Lewis, their existence has to be taken literally, just as God's experience does. But their nature can only be grasped by symbols, just as God's nature can only be grasped by symbols. Kennedy, that sounds more like a modernism than your traditionalism. Lewis, if you knew the writings of the saints and mystics, you will know that my interpretation is quite traditional. You modernists tend to dismiss tradition without much of erring for it, you know? Kennedy, I'm still not convinced that an ordinary, sane human being could end up in hell. Lewis, read my friend Charles Williams' novel Descent into Hell, and you will be Kennedy. And where am I to find bookstore in this place? Lewis, touche. Score one for you. I do tend to get rather absent-minded at times. Kennedy, well, let's get present mind to return to my original question. Where are we? And why are we here? In this, is neither heaven or hell. End of the part one.